maybe a little, you know, I mean directly, like people I've worked with. I'm not including like anyone I've worked with in BDT. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just generally, right? Wait, hold on. Oh, he was talking about the booklet. That webinar was so much fun. So anyway, so generically, it depends on the trader too, and how willing the trader is to give themselves over to the system. You know what I mean? How easily, you know, and this is a personality trait, obviously. How easily can that trader dispense of what they knew, right? And not just adopt the new information, but believe it. You know what I mean? So, and that varies. So, like, there's guys like Bram, for instance. Bram went from being very frustrated about basically quitting trading for all time, and 3 months later was consistently profitable.
That's
Right?
awesome.
It went very, because basically what I told the, you know, I said to Bram, we had a big talk about what I wanted him to do and what we thought about, and then the next week he literally just did it, all of it. And then, but by doing it, he recognized not just that it was working, but he recognized where his faults were. Right? So he said, oh, I've kind of figured out what my big trap is and what I'm going into. And I said, okay, fix it. And then the next week he fixed it. Right? And then so much of what stock trading is execution. Right? It's not really, most of us, right? The two major issues that go against most people in stock trading: one, execution. Most of us know what to do, right? Just don't have the capacity to do it consistently over and over again, right? There's an execution problem, right? On the other side of that is tolerance. Because the market is designed to entice participation, you want to participate with it, right? The new ups, the new downs, the highs, the lows, the highs, the lows. These things are the jigging that it's using to entice your lizard brain to participate with the market, right? They're making you want to do stuff, right? So most of us are correct about the entry, and most of us are correct about the exit. So what I mean is, you think it's going to go up today, it actually does go up, right? More often than not, what your initial bias is on the stock actually is what occurs in the stock. The problem is you don't have the ability to tolerate the journey, right? And that's what RVR is basically our way of creating some tolerance, right? So, and the market maker intentionally moves a little too high, intentionally moves a little too low, because they're constantly testing our tolerance, right? And our ability to stay in our positions or to stay out of positions, right? They make the new high because they want you to buy, being afraid you're going to miss out, right? They make the new low to get you to sell, afraid that you're going to lose the rest of your profit or take on more loss than you expected, right? These things exist for that. So if you can pair execution with awareness of the system and how the system tries to entice your participation, then you'll kind of get what I basically consider to be like a BS filter, right? Where you'll start to look at the market and you'll be like, I get that everyone said this is a really strong stock right now, but if it was a really strong stock, it wouldn't have went here the way it went here. It would have went down here first, then went up here, right? It kind of like actually with the market right now. The reason why I'm saying, like, I actually don't, everyone's saying the market's responding very aggressively and strongly, and it certainly is. It just ran to a very large seller at the floor pivot, floor 13,400 for NQ. So, but the question is if this is a real strong day, if it's a really good day, why are we going so high on so little volume?
Right.
Right? Like, why are they working so hard to rally this thing out to this level right now? So does that mean, you know, at this point, obviously, I'm not looking for a long on anything, because not only are we too high to long, right? It doesn't make sense on why we're here, right? So my BS filter starts to kick in. Now, could this just be a trend long day? Sure. Right? Maybe I'll just miss the boat on this one. I'm not a momentum trader, right? So I don't get these. But yeah. So for the learning curve, for me, closer to a year for Dwayne. So, but Dwayne will attest, and if you're getting a little frustrated in your journey, Dwayne's a good person to talk to about it, because Dwayne is the evidence that sometimes you just need to keep trying a few things until you find what really clicks for you. And his and him and I actually ended up being quite similar in this regard, where both of us went very complicated with our trading, and now we've both been basically working to simplify it. We both basically are just trading futures for the most part, and we're trading market movement on the futures. So basically, we're kind of just hanging out. We're like, our days are way slower pace. We're making great money, but we're doing it in a much less stressful way for us, right? But for other people, the way we're making money is insanely stressful, right? Because I'm letting it get as high as it can possibly fucking get, and then I'm gonna short it, right? So it's like, but what you're going against, Brian Pesum does this with me all the time. Oh, well, for me, it's still in a bullish trend because it hasn't crossed the 9 EMA. I'm like, all right, feel fun longing it at the 9 EMA, but I'm gonna short it until it gets there. Right, I'm going short. We're too far away. We're coming back, and guess what? If we come back and test that 90 EMA again, we're gonna flip this trend real quick, right? But it's such a different way of playing. So you do have to find your edge there, and for some, it will happen in a month or two. For others, it can take the better part of a year once you're really on the right path. But inevitably, it all comes down to execution, right? If you can, as this is how I like to say it, execute your system exactly as you know to execute it, right? I don't even care if your system is defined correctly or not, right? You just have to execute what you have defined as well as you possibly can, right? And if you do that, regardless of win or loss, actually, you kind of want the loss here. The loss makes things adjust much faster than the winning. When you're winning, there's lots of questions. Loss is very definitive. But when you take on the loss, you can at least say, this is what I meant to do. This was the result. Where most of you, all of you, where most of you will spin your wheels is, this is what I was supposed to do. This was the result. Right? But this is what I was supposed to do will constantly be changing ever so slightly. Right? And that makes it really hard to evaluate, and this is the result. Right? Because you're injecting variables. So you need to define your strategy as well and as simply as possible. Right? When, for me, basically saying, if I'm going to buy, it needs to be above a 4 or above below above S6 if we're oversold. But you know what I mean? For the most part, I'm above a 4. If I'm going to sell, I'm below a 4. If I'm going to buy, I'm above a 4. All right, knowing that, is my order book bullish or bearish? What is the bias? Okay, so I'm in a support area where I expect to buy, and I have a bullish bias on my level 2. Okay, no questions now. I want to get long. Can I? Right? If I go long here, where do I think this thing's going to go, and can I get the profit I need by the time we get there? Right? And if that answer is yes, I'm in. Right? It's 3 major criteria. Now, obviously, there's a lot of complicated trade book creation and experience and stuff that went into that simplicity, right? VPA, all of these other things, but that is the crux of it, right? Are we in an area where, right? Where, when, how? Are we in an area where we can take a trade? All right. Is it the time to take the trade? Can I manage the trip? Right? Can I manage the journey to where I want to go? And if you have those 3 elements in every single trade defined, right, then what you can do is adjudicate them, right? So, okay, where, when, and how? Well, every time I want to go short, every time it goes to R4, this is what I'm going to be looking for. Well, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? I had the right ladder. I had the right order book, right? I had the right range. I had the right order book, and I had the ability to get in. What happened? It came up and it wicked me out. Okay, so now moving forward, rather than putting my stop here, because what I notice over this 20 set cycle, I'm getting wicked out a lot, I'm going to move my stop to here, and I'm going to target here. Right? Boom. You're in. Right? And all you got to do is land like 2 or 3 of those, and you would be very surprised. Like it's kind of like if you hit the perfect golf shot,
You know what I mean? The
Right.
first time it's the perfect golf shot, and that happens randomly. But if you can do it 4 or 5 times in a row, get your woods on. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like time to go because you've got it, right? And actually, if anything, now that you've got it, you want to use it as much as possible until you
Right.
lose it.
And you
But
believe that you can do it.
and believe you can do it, right? So, and that's the hard part, and you that commentary is actually quite interesting because that is the hard part, right? Because in this game, you have to execute without belief,
Hmm.
and that is very difficult to do, right?
Right.
You actually have to execute a system. The belief will come after,
Hmm.
right? So as you do it, the statistics that you are provided, right, from your execution, and again, this is why the execution is paramount, right? The execution provides you the statistics that will allow you to build belief, right? Or let's not call it belief, let's just call it like conviction, right? Which is the reality that I'm going to lose, and I'm going to lose often, but because of my trading acumen, my winners will outbalance my losers, right? Even right? I say it all day. I got 75% hit rate. That means I'm losing 1 out of every 4 trades, right?
Hmm.
At best, right? I have 50-50 days, right? So if I'm losing 1 out of every 4 trades, I can't fuck up that one losing trade.
Right.
You know, but I also can't fuck up whatever winning trade worked out really well either, right? If that winning trade I took, if I didn't hold that for the proper R on its held, then it's not going to negate my losing trade,
Right.
right? So execution is paramount, right? Because it's the only way the formula works. So start there. You know, work on your execution, make sure you're staying focused in on that part of the process, and then adjudicate. And what you will find is the easier and the more you can allow yourself to embrace the concept almost flagrantly, right? Like almost like a little naively. Like
Hmm.
just like just kind of like dispel some of the like basic concepts that you already kind of know, you know, and then just look at it and say, okay, this guy's saying when this happens, this is what's going to happen afterwards, right? And just go
Right.
for it. It'll only have to hit 1 or 2 times for you, and then you're going to go, oh shit, okay, I get
Hmm.
it. Because what it's one of those weird things. Um, you can see it over and over and over again, but it's not till you find it that you can hold it. I don't know if
Right.
that makes sense to you when I say
Yeah,
that
like
that
you
way.
have to, like you have to plan on doing it, do it, watch it happen, have it work out, and then you're a believer.
Right. Yeah. It's you gotta you can't just see it. You gotta actually hold it in your hand to believe it. It's got to be
Hmm.
right there. But so what I'm trying to do is via execution. I'm basically trying to shove it in your face. You know what I mean? Over and over and over again because I'm trying to force you to see. Mark always uses this really fun saying that he talks about. He says, seeing the forest through the trees."
Right.
Right. And so, and what he's talking about is don't get obsessed with looking at the tree that's in front of you. You're inside of a forest, right? There's a whole big thing that's going on out here. So, but your execution is what allows you to bridge that gap, right? But your execution, unfortunately, has to come first,
Hmm.
right? Because once you hold it in your hand a couple of times, it's Neo in the Matrix. You know what I mean? It's when he
Right.
finally believes, and then he turns down the hallway, and all he sees is code and 3 agents, right? That are all like
Right.
fluctuating in code, and they're like, "What's going on with you?" You know, and he knows he already knew there was a Matrix, right? Someone plugged a dongle into his head and programmed him kung fu. At
Right.
that point, you really don't believe this is like a thing, right? But he didn't, right? His self doubt. It wasn't until he just believed, right? Then everything opens up for you. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you there, right? But without having you, you know, hopefully without making you blow up an account and do some other stupid shit that you have to do in the process, which really is helpful. I know that's like a horrible thing to say, but it's actually quite true.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
I don't wish that upon anybody, but believe it or not, there. So and this is a true story. My grandmother, God rest her soul, you know, just always used to say, nobody changes until it hurts enough. right? And I actually have a memory from when I was like 7 years old of hitting my head on the kitchen table because I crawled underneath the kitchen table, and then she literally looks at me and she goes, "Well, maybe next time you pay attention." And then I looked at her and I go, "Probably not." And she goes, "Oh, it must not have hurt that much then," right? So, and even I would admit it in the time, yeah, that didn't really hurt that much. I'll probably do it again, right? So, but she would say no. So, but that's the thing with me. With the reason I changed so drastically is because when I blew up that account, it hurt, and I did not want to experience that moment again. I would rather be wrong on every trade I take for the rest of my life, one trade at a time, than allow one large bag hold or a handful of large bag holds to completely annihilate my account.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would rather get to bleed out slowly of my own will, right, than just get slit open, right, and gutted.
Yeah.
And so once that happened, that was actually my defining moment in trading, was when I did that, because I decided in that moment I am never going to take on this kind of pain in the market ever again. And my conviction built quickly off of that, right? Because now at least I know how much I'm going to lose on every trade.
Right.
That's a start. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can do that every single time. And that is where I started. My first major rule was I am not going to ever lose more than 1R, whatever that R is, on any singular trade, period, at all. Never again. Right? So I made that decision, and then I moved forward, and I went almost 2.5 years straight. I mean, I'm still in it. So I've gone 2.5, almost 3 years straight. And other than when trading futures a couple times for swing, because I can't honestly tell you that I was able to manage risk to an R in that scenario. But on every intentional intraday trade that I've taken, I know exactly what my risk was going in. I knew exactly what my profit expectations were coming out. Right? So, and that was a big part of conviction, because you know what? I'm going to lose, but at least I know how much I'm going to lose.
Right.
Right? So that's a good start. I'll start there. Right? And then I found, okay, well, now I've stopped my bleed. Problem 1 handled. What's my next problem? Okay, well, I've stopped my big bleed. I've still got a small bleed. Right? I'm still losing more money more often than I'm not losing money. So how do I stop that? And what I realized then was I was basically running a 1-to-1. Right? By the time I was done, basically I would take half off at 2-to-1, which would get me 1R, and then I would stop out at break even. And that would happen on the vast majority of my trades. Right? So I would lose 1R when I was supposed to, but I would never really make more than like 1R. Right? So inevitably, and then I wasn't running the best hit rate. Right? So I had like a 40% hit rate, so I wasn't losing anymore, but I was just ever so bleeding. And I said, okay, I can work with this. So now what do I do here now? And what I realized was I actually needed to widen my stops a little bit so that I could hold longer. Mm-hmm. Right? And I started going for 4-to-1s and 5-to-1s. Well, actually, sorry. I started first by focusing on increasing my hit rate. So I actually started reading VPA books. I started, that's when I started studying the tape and order book, trying to increase my efficacy and my hit rate, because I wanted to get a hit rate of around 3/4. That was always my goal. So I started working, and I had a 3/4 hit rate, but even then I was still only just barely profitable at that point, right? Because I had a 3/4 hit rate, but I was still only getting 2-to-1, then stopping out, right? So then I said, well, how do I start making more money? So what I started doing is using wider stops with less shares and holding longer, right? So I actually lowered my risk and just went for bigger targets. That worked. Right, that worked for me very well. Right, I started saying I'm going to use a new 5-minute high. I'm going to actually go half risk and hold longer, and that worked well for me. And I did that shit forever. I mean, I must have done that for 6 months, 8 months straight. I was trading lower risk for higher target, and it was working great. And then I started upping my risk, right, and holding the targets. And then that's kind of when I hit trading nirvana, which was basically I had like an average. Per trade, I averaged out 2 to 3R instead of break even to 1R. I was averaging 2 to 3R, but I had a 70% hit rate. Right? And that's trading nirvana. You can't fuck up at that point. It's almost impossible to have a red day if you have 75% hit rate and you're making 3-4R. on your average trade.
Oh, we're heading up to 9:30.
Sweet. Yeah, I know. I told them I wasn't going to trade the open today.
Okay, all right.
So
Sorry to
the
interrupt.
thing that
No,
most
not at all.
traders have the hardest time with is really just following those rules, executing the way they need to be executed.
Yep. Thank you.
As far as I see it, there's only one thing that I have
Ding, ding,
100%
fuckers.
control of in the market, and that's how much I'm going to lose on this trade.
Yep. When
That's
you
it.
get in, when you get out. That's all you got. Everything else is a figment of your imagination.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Fake news.
CPNG.
We are opening so high up here. Patience, Richard Parker.
It's like we're opening up in breakout territory.
We're in breakout territory, but we've like broken out. I mean, we're already there. Like it happened already. So the question is, like, do we just keep doing this, or? I mean, normally you would at least expect like a freaking pullback or something to R4. Yeah. Give us a nice little. We got VWAP at 4150 on the ES paired with R4. At least give me a little pulley back, something.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice if the market would give us a chance to play.
Right, yeah.
No? Too much to ask?
Hey, Thor, take a look at Airbnb. I think it oversold after earnings last night. Let me know what you think.
Airbnb, woo! 1,500% RVOL. Bounced. That's fun. I mean, the ladder's bullish as shit right now. It's gonna squeeze. I mean, it's got a really bullish ladder. Fucking crazy ass market right now. Look at this shit. We really don't have very many orders once you get above like 13,420 on NQ. We've got a really big order wall on ES from 4170 to 4175.
So based on the conversation we just had, following the rules, we have no trade in this. We might as well just sit back and wait for something to pop up.
Yep. Ideally.
Yeah.
No trades are good trades.
Exercise patience.
Cash is a position.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes
So
we
you're
just got to tell ourselves sometimes it's just like, hey, not trading is the trade. That is the trade.
It's a fact. Remember, because the idea is to buy or sell in the best position possible.
Right.
Right. So it's not just about getting in or just about getting out. Right. It's about getting in and getting out in the best position possible.
I have this bad habit of always trying to trade like it's like a restaurant. You show up, you eat, right? It's like always trying to find a trade at that moment. And
Yeah, well, it's like think about what was it? I think it was 2 days ago, Monday.
Mhm.
Come on, you piece of shit! I shorted AMD right off of R6. Yes, 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 yes. Woo! There we go.
Oh, nice.
That was beautiful. All right, AMD. I'm out at break even. '98's got a really big seller.
The ES looks like it's trying to form some type of wall. It's like clouds on top of clouds.
Come on. Come on, you fucker.
And like we were talking about earlier, Marlon, to the
Yeah.
downside on the ES, there's nothing. But I wouldn't
Right,
be
it's
surprised to
empty.
see it go right towards nothing.
Right.
Done it before.
I have a large buyer here, just got absorbed on AMD. You didn't have the balls to go through 98. There we go. Come on.
Oh,
Give me that.
was
Give me
already
that
drawn.
partial.
There goes Dwayne.
Yeah.
down into the ether land of void. We got two little orders there, but sometimes when you see those clouds coming over, they look like clouds because they don't look like solid lines. They
Yeah.
reject
That's
the price.
so for me, a cloud's a good acronym. I like to think of it as like quicksand, right?
Mhm.
So it's a lot of transactional potential, but it's gonna be really difficult for the market maker to move through it because when the market maker moves the price, right? They need a market order and a limit order, right?
Mhm.
But you can only advance in price when all of the limits at a particular price have been absorbed. Right. So
Mhm.
if you look at like $98 and at $98 you've got 100,000 shares. Right. And then at 98.01 you've got another 50,000 shares. Well, you're not going to go up to that 50,000 until you obviously, right, you would imagine until you can transact the 100,000 that are in front of it on a limit order.
Mhm.
Right. So but because of this, right, if the market maker starts to encounter multiple levels, So you've got 98, 9801, 98092, 9803 that all have a lot of selling on them. Then basically whatever market orders are coming in are going to get deposited immediately on the price.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So they're not going to go higher, right? Because they're not absorbing all the limits at the current price. So they're just going to keep sitting there and just, so you're going to see buying on the ask, right? But the price isn't going to raise.
Right.
And this is how you can tell, right, that we've run into a wall. Well, I'm out of AMD again. This is how you can tell. I managed to make about 4R between those two trades, though. That's pretty awesome.
Nice.
Pain in the ass. It still wants 98. But anyway, so you can kind of see if you have these, this is the difference really between a wall and a run for me.
Mhm.
Right? Is a wall has multiple orders deposited on multiple levels. Right? At the at a similar price. The ass stock, man, is gonna piss me off. Everything's rolling over pretty good right now.
Mhm. The ES is at 4150 right now. Would you be looking at it? Or
Whoa.
would you just not? Oof. I'm glad
done.
I did not touch
Yes.
that.
Oh man, I wish I'd have shorted that shit. Dang it, I should have shorted it off the floor.
I'm just happy I didn't try to get in
Dude,
there.
Miles, see what I was fucking talking about?
Yep.
See what I was talking about? Why?
What exactly?
Why
What?
in the pre-market were we
Okay.
on low volume, were we working so hard to get up to the floor levels? Because we're about to sell the fuck off.
We can retest R4 then and then continue the
No,
sell.
I mean, we could just be doing a hard move back to R4 to pick up a bid, and then we'll bounce.
So my first short this morning was a 1R loss. My second short was a way more than 1R gain. I'm actually done.
Nice, Storm.
Son of a gun, Dwayne.
That's a nice sell.
Hey, I took that 1R loss though.
You took it, buddy. You took it.
I
was a little bit early.
punch. Yeah. Good for you. How'd you make your multiple R trade?
Actually, I held just a little bit, so I'm up about, it's between 4 and 5R.
Nice. Oh, you shorted.
Yeah. I shorted the first short, hit my stop, and but I got back in and
What a piece of crap.
held on.
Now you can go to work, Abby.
You know, I cannot watch doing futures. I cannot watch a tick chart because you know, Thor was saying that Mark talks about the forest for the trees. If I'm watching a tick chart, I'm like, I've got a microscope on
Like
the bark.
tree.
You're looking at the leaves.
It's like, yeah, I've got a microscope on the bark of one tree.
Oh my god.
Tick,
He's
tick.
like not at the trees. He's like looking at the weed. He's like looking at the weed, the fungus on the base of the tree.
This tree's not gonna make it because it's.
He's like, this tree does not look good. This is a shitty tree.
That's great. You picked the unhealthy tree in the most healthiest forest and
Just started studying the shit out of it.
that tree died, but the forest did great.
Forest looks amazing. That is the market. The market looks great, but your account's blown up. Good job. Staring at that tree. I knew this thing was gonna do that, Dwayne. Damn it. I'm telling you, the shit, and you guys will do this too. The stuff that makes me laugh or that gets me excited about the market is shit like this now. You know, just knowing kind of how they do this stupid stuff and just being like, I can't believe I did not short floor. This is twice now. I didn't long, at S3 and I didn't short at floor 4, I'm they're lucky I've made like 5R, 6R on AMD right now, or I might be like upset about that.
That's what that gets me a little bit. I would have been looking for an R4 bounce because we opened up
Yeah.
above R4,
Yeah.
and that would have got me.
Yeah, well, no. If you would have shorted the floor, well, if you'd have longed R4 in the pre-market at 941, you'd be right.
Mhm.
If you would have shorted floor 4, which isn't ideal, but you know, once you're there, you're not long anymore. Where did it come right back to? It just came back and tagged R4. Went right into it, bounced, hammered, and moved up. The thing is after going that high up, I don't know if I mean if this thing went long now and then trended out for a breakout, it would be spectacular. I would be wrong, you know, in what I think is going to happen today, but I would watch it to see it happen just to say, hey, that was awesome. You know, I mean, it could happen. I mean, we are above R4. We just did a hard pull with good volume right back into it. So we certainly can. I mean, we set an isolated pivot on it too. So we could push back up, we could try, you know, and try and break this thing out. It's all about the volume right now. So as we're coming off of R4 and we're pulling, the issue we have is the volume is not increasing. So we need more volume at this level to help propel us upwards. And let's take a look at the market on the book.
We got another cloud right above us.
Yeah, we got a cloud right above us, and at 41.35 we have a bidder that has now presented themselves very firmly. So our sellers have dropped quite a bit, and we actually now have large bidders appearing to the downside. So yeah, I mean, for me, I wouldn't long right now. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah, look at 41.35.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. 41.35, big bidder just came on.
Somebody just shorted, but he could be wrong. But it's not looking like it.
Many people are. Yeah, we're going down still.
I would say that's probably Mark sitting there, but he would never set his target that close. He might have.
On later. The guy he'll come on later. The guy shorted it from the top.
Yeah. Which I actually did this morning. I took a loss, but he does that too. He'll tell you I'm often early. You know, but I didn't sit there and say, "Oh man, you know, it got me by, you know, 3 ticks." If I had just put my stop, no, I didn't do any of that. I just kept watching it. And you know, and Bookmap was not encouraging right there before it dropped. I thought, what in the world is going on
and
here?
there wasn't any orders like we were joking about. It was like it was empty. It was...
And that's where time in the chair comes in, because you've seen it before. So, you know,
well, just so remember when we were doing the Bookmap sesh last night, one of the people that were in there, she was actually a real estate agent. So in part of my Bookmap presentation, you know, I do the real estate analogy, you know, and this is kind of falls into that category, right? Which is if you look at, I'm going to show my screen real quick, actually. Check this out. If you look at the ES right now on my screen, notice look at the wall of sellers.
Yeah.
Right? So the real estate analogy basically goes as this, right? How do you know when a market is strong in the real estate market? You know it's strong because there is inventory being offered, and that inventory is being bid upon aggressively. Right? And the big word that I'm trying to use here is the word aggressive. Right? Because market orders are aggressive market activity. Limit orders is passive, right? Market orders are aggressive. Right? So anytime there's a market order, somebody's doing something, right? An algo's doing something, somebody's doing something. So what you can see by this like cloud, if you will, right, or this wall of orders, right, would be akin to walking into a neighborhood wanting to buy a house to profit on selling it later, like a flipper would. And as you walk in there, you notice there are 50 houses for sale in the neighborhood. Right? There is an abundance of inventory, but there is no bidding upon that inventory, which means it is now a buyer's market. Right? What you do not want to do is start buying in a buying market. You know what I mean? In this capacity. Right? You don't want to start buying now knowing that there is very little potential for it to go higher. So in Dwayne's instance, what he's going to recognize is although this may not be a short, it's definitely not a long.
Right.
Right? It may not be a short. It could just chop here, but it's certainly not a long. Right? So what he did is he positioned himself as a seller, right? Recognizing the overabundance of sellers at this level is going to encourage a shakeout, right? Which means the bids are going to take control and they're going to start moving lower, right? Because they're going to be able to create the demand lower, right? Because there's obviously a lot of sellers, but not a lot of buyers, right? So it is now becoming a buyer's market, right? Which means we're going to drag the price lower. So in this instance, what Dwayne recognized at that point is not that there was necessarily, and this is people ask, how are you in before the book flip, right? How are you in before this happens? This is how, right? Because what we're recognizing is, although it may not be a short, it's definitely not a long, right? And because we return to value more often than not, well, if you're near the top of the range, and this is what you're seeing at the top of the range, if your volume is low, you've got this large set of sellers. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible for it to go up, because that would obviously be, an erroneous statement, but highly improbable, right? It is very unlikely that the market maker is going to move up through that, right? It's not concentrated enough, right? The orders look like this, right? They create nice, tightly defined levels that they're going to play to. This cloud is like quicksand, right? The market maker is going to struggle like crazy trying to go through all of these limits, all pushed out over, a few bucks worth of range. You know what I mean? It's just a crap ton of selling orders. So the market maker naturally is going to go, no. Right? I'm not going to absorb this inventory this high. I'm going to go lower and force the sellers to go lower. Now look at the dots. Right? These dots here, these big red dots, if you hover over them, hitting the ask, hitting the bid. Right? So at this point, sellers are actually jumping over and hitting the bid. But look, sellers are aggressively coming out with market orders and they're selling as quickly as they can on the way down. Look what happens when this inventory drops away. Notice what's happening, right? Our sellers are coming out to the bid. The bid is winning, right? Because our sellers started selling here. Now they're selling more. Look at the difference in the seller versus the bid. Look at all of our buys. Tiny green dots on our buys. Look at our sells, giant red dots. Right, so we're obviously encountering a significantly larger amount of selling ahead of this wall. This is a really good example, actually. Dang. I wish I had had this example last night. All these people are talking about breaking the highs of days and stuff like, what are you talking? Oh, Roblox? Maybe, I don't know. Big order 4135. So we only got to move, Dwayne. We only got to move like a few points lower, and we start to lose everyone who bought at 830. So that's the other thing you need to realize too, right? Is people bought at 8:30. So as this started to move lower, anyone who bought early started to sell. Right? So now we're actually getting below the 4s. Right? We could be going into a breakdown at this, we could, and this is kind of what was funny, and this is why I got really excited, like maybe like a half hour ago, or maybe a little less, when I started saying, see, Dwayne, this is what I was talking about, is when this started happening, I didn't go long, because I was like, man, it doesn't make sense why we're running out like this. Well, it makes sense if we were squeezing into a really good selling position so that we could sell off.
Yep.
But that point that you just said, Thor, right there, that's something that, those are tidbits that I think I want to learn more about. Like like for you, like, well, we squeezed out too much for no reason. We have to go down.
Yeah.
That the knowledge of that, like, how many of those are there that we need to know about?
It's hard. It's part of the reason why why I like doing it this way in this session, because it's hard to read a book and get all this stuff. It would be hard for me to remember to put it in a book.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I learned this because, this is market making stuff that I've only learned because I've been on the NYSE.
Mm-hmm.
And I've a couple times now where I've gotten to hang out, spend time with Peter and his son. I've gotten to actually like see the process and how it's going. And really it was the conversation about what motivates and incentivizes their profit structure. Yeah. Right? So for a market maker, this big of a move on that little money was a wasted opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? It was a very large move, but they didn't transact a lot of transactions. Right? So you've given up on the ES 41.40 to 41.68, and you barely made money doing it. Mm-hmm. Right? So what profit is there in it for the market makers themselves to continue rallying? There's not a lot. Right? They would be much more happy to go back down. That's for certain. Right? So, because they know if they start going down, the transactional potential is going to be fantastic. Right? Because they've already trapped. Right? We've already squeezed. This whole pre-market action, and it's kind of what I was insinuating, is a bull trap. Right? Mm-hmm. That when the news came out, they immediately rallied it as high as they could on whatever volume they could get because they wanted to get rid of shares. Right? It's basically like a UTAD. On a slightly larger time frame, like like a 30-minute or a 45 hour UTAD.
So in those cases, it's okay to get away from the cams.
No, I'd still trade the cams. I would have just trade. I would have I would right now the play is still R4, right? So you could have but the question is it a long or is it a short? Right now, it's hard to really say. Right now, it's got a very large wall of support at 41.35. Right, and if that wall holds, we'll squeeze.
Right.
Right, so and that could become an R4 breakout.
But
right, I'm not saying we fully sell off the whole day. Right, but we came back right to coming back to R4 in the 2 days ago's high. Right, that allows us to come perfectly, or is that 2 days ago's low? Sorry. Comes back to a perfect area now where the market makers are right, where they can do some transacting and do some stuff, right? They're just the larger time frame participants. These people, they're just not going to let the price get away from them for free. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's so much potential, right? They're not going to buy up there.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what you saw by this chart, right? What you saw was we lost volume to the bid. Right, so we ended up with a whole bunch of sellers with not a lot of people willing to buy. So we're gonna have to come back down and find someone. Find these. See these big green dots here? Mm-hmm. These are our buyers. So what I if you're using Bookmap, what I really have been enjoying lately is it's called volume dots, and it's volume delta, so it's buy minus sell. Right, so whenever you're seeing the large dots, right, you're seeing an imbalance. Right, so this was imbalanced on the sell side by 74 contracts. Right, someone bought on the ask, and then it was an imbalance versus the sells of up to 74 contracts. Right, so this is showing, you can see how when we were selling, we're getting large sells, but look what happens once we start hitting the large buys. We start to bottom. right? We consolidate, but then boom, more large sells drives us down, and then we start buying. And right now, look what we're doing. We're buying right off of this level. We're not selling into this level. We're buying off of it. Right? So there's a really good chance we can squeeze up to 4150. Right? Because we're buying the bottom of this little range here, which this, you could loosely define this as a range. Right? 4150 or 4152 to 4135. Right? You can look at that on your DOS. That sets up really clean. Man, look at that. Right back to R4 and then pop. That's a good time. What a squeeze. All the way back up. Right off of R4. See, the R4 retest could have been a good one. That's fun. Look how fast Tesla. Look at these buy orders. So we'll use Tesla as an example because I think this will be a fun one. But look how we're coming into this level, right? And as we're coming into this level, we're buying. Right? People are actually buying into this. They didn't sell into it. There's a big buy.
One thing I often remind myself of: the Robin Hooders aren't seeing this. They don't have this information.
Sure don't. Wish they did too. Still no selling. See how we're still holding? We're still, there's no big selling. You want to wait. You want to see the big selling. There. See the seller just hit? Sell, sell. See the sellers? That's pretty cool. Volume dots. Let's do the minimum trade size as do like 50. That should get us a few less dots. So we've had, look at this. We've had a seller jump the price, right? We had this big seller here, and now someone is starting to sell in front of the order. So someone's getting a little aggressive, even though they're using a limit order. They're losing confidence for sure. We bought on the bid there. See what it looks like in the micro level? This is why you don't use the micro level. This is running head first into the trees.
Yep.
Look at the selling though. This is why I like being like out here. We're seeing a lot more selling than we were. A lot more red dots, where before there were just green dots. Interesting to see the market bounce off of R4 like that. That was really nice. That was a good move.
Kind of like a couple days ago, was it? We had that big drop in the afternoon, and then it bounced, came all the way back.
That was incredible. Right off the cams though, right where it's supposed to.
Yep.
$175 has a big order on Tesla. But we're offering in front of that order all over the place. I don't think we've got it to go for it. Our vol's 118, which isn't bad. But our sellers, so look at this, y'all. Look, the sellers are starting to get impatient. So this is the main order up here, this large ask, but notice how our sellers are now starting to come in front of that large ask, right? This is clearly some impatience happening here. So they want to get filled, and they want to make sure they get filled, so they're putting themselves in front of the big order. But they don't want to go out on market, because if they go out on market, the price will drop, right? So they have to hold at limit. Oh, look, order just split.
Wow.
It lightened and split. Right, so this is the same order. They left half of it here, dropped the other half down to here.
Kind of cool to see the big boys get impatient and do the same shit we do.
They do. Their algos do it too. Like
Yeah.
that split order shit, that has to be an algo.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know who would have the mental wherewithal to punch. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that are to do that shit on their terminals really fast. Some of those market making terminals are fancy as shit. They got like weird keyboards and shit like that. They kind of look like a courtroom typewriter kind of keyboard.
Hmm.
So they can just go up to it and go, and it's like, you know, but it's basically like a Stream Deck with like hot buttons and shit. Like they're just like, you're just like, whoa. And that's what I'm up against. Fucking crazy. I'm gonna do a 5-minute. I'm kind of playing around with.
So
what
Thor,
camera.
so if we wanted to short it from the open, would you consider that a different playbook, like an overextension playbook?
What do you mean? Like, which one?
Like on the ES, that nice sell-off that we had. Like if we wanted to put a playbook
Yeah.
together for that.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be short floor 4 would be the play, which I do use. It's just not consistent enough for me to have included it in the book.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you are on a breakout at that point.
Right.
So you need so there is some, you know, there is a little bit more finesse to it because of that. You know, you have to be really confident with your, you know, your order book reading and tape reading and stuff like that to make sure you're not, because the in most instances we're playing the ebb and flow of participation, right? So if you're still too close to value and you're not far enough away from it, then we're going to play back to it.
But
Right.
because we
So
were
so
away
normally
from that,
once you're normally big seller. Once you're normally beyond value to a certain degree, we kind of assume you've broken away and now you are in search of new value. Right? So normally around floor 4, you find new value. So it's a great place to go out, but it's not really a great place to go for a short, because what often happens is actually what happened today is you'll fail off of it, come back to R4 and then squeeze all the way back up. Right? Because you're going to find value out there somewhere. Like the market could actually be choppy for like the whole rest of the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we could actually go back up to almost to floor 4 up here, 4160. We could drop to 4144 and then come back to 4160. We could just chop and settle right here at the end of the day. Right? Who knows? Or we could rally out to 4175 and then dump all day. Like it could really do anything in the range that it's in right now. But yeah, it's certainly something you can play, but you just have to remember you're kind of it's almost kind of a kill zone, because you're going to be trading against the 4s, right? So you're going to be trading from 6 into 4. But I do trade from 6 into 4, especially if the cams are wide enough, right? Or the breakout's big enough, like in this instance where that moved back. And so the question is, if you're going to implement it, will be, if you're outside of the 4s, your play is back to the 4s, right? So that is going to be, you know, what your play is going to be, right? So let me show you. Hold on, where's the book stuff? 2-day relationships. That's F right here, basically, right? It's, you know, or sorry, C. So C starts off by playing back into the 4s and then out. Right, so this start doesn't have to start here. It can start here, right? So your expectation for this move should only really be back to the 4s.
Right.
right? So if you go to get into this move and then you say, well, I'm only going to get 1R by the time I get to the force, then don't take it. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
it's you're more than likely going to get caught and then squeezed back and even into a breakout.
Hmm.
Right. So, but now, so in this instance, it would be better almost to not take the trade
Hmm.
and wait for this moment. Right. So either allow it to come down to C and try and play it off of here, or just wait. Like if there's a lot of orders here, so you don't want to trade into it, just wait for it to go down and come back up and test that area and fail from here.
Mhm.
This move from R6 down is what we call a unicorn.
Hmm.
Right? Now we call this the unicorn because it is the rare trade that you don't get very often, but when these breakouts from R6 fail, especially on a tight range, they will run all the way out the other side. And they are huge trades. Some of the biggest trades ever. Profit potential wise, the most profit potential out of any trade you can ever take. But the hit probability on this one is inverse. Right? So you have, when you're playing these, you're playing them big. Right? I use a wider stop and I'm going to target way down here. Right? Like I'm going to go crazy, right? Because I'm expecting if this fails, the failure is going to be epic. It's going to come back into range. And not only that, it will likely attempt to run through range and maybe even just come out the other side.
Hmm.
Right? Which again is a massive move. You know what I mean? But this takes a lot of patience. So now sometimes this move can set up right here. Right? But again, just knowing the context, you're very likely to get squeezed when you're trading against that. So just remember that. You got to keep that in mind. If you decide to implement it, which I'm saying you definitely could, if you decide to, just keep that in mind. You want to make sure you've got an order wall up here, right? That's not attracting the price, that's repelling it. You know what I mean? And then make sure you're in the right spot. And if you are, I mean, go for it. The move could be huge.
Hmm.
Could be huge.
'Cause,
Huge.
my chart, it just rejected R6 just now, like maybe 2-3 minutes ago
On you said SPY?
on the ES.
On ES? Yeah. Let's see, ES. Yeah. Yeah, we started outside the floor. Now we've pulled all the way back to R6 and we're now testing the underneath of R6, right? So if you're gonna short, this is more the spot.
Gotcha.
Right, because now you've come all the way back up. The volume actually struggled a bit in the process.
Right.
You've trapped a couple of good bulls on the way back up. You've also partialed some of your bears, so you've lightened your downside a titch. Right, now you can sell this thing off. Right, like I definitely wouldn't be a long from here.
No, definitely not.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know if it's a short, but it's definitely not a long from here.
Right.
Because you're going to trade right into the top of a range. Even with it, or the only way you could have gone long was if you had went long, a while ago.
Mhm.
Which even then, I don't know if I would have longed that R4 test. I mean, at that point, you've already gone out past the floor. Now you're coming all the way back to the fours. For me, that is not strong. Right? For me, a strong stock would have been, for me, a strong stock would have opened in the support ranges. Right? For me, it's not, like I said, it's the issue I had in the very beginning was why, if this was good news, why the hell did we run straight out to the selling range?
Hmm.
Right? Like that doesn't make sense. Oh, yeah, baby. There we go.
As we were talking about it, right?
Oh, I shorted Tesla.
Okay.
Look.
Nice. Oh, look,
Oh man.
right at the top too. Good trade.
It fucking hurts sometimes. Being me. I'm just kidding.
That's friggin' magic.
That's nice.
Was your stop the ask at 174.50?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep, right above it. Right up here. So you see this is over 2 to 1. Ooh.
Is it possible to share your bookmap setup?
Yeah,
So
of
we-
course.
Okay, nice.
I mean, I say that. I mean, like, as in, I don't mind sharing it.
But you don't know. Okay.
Can I share it? That's
Um,
a different question.
So, Bram, did you get Bookmap and you're trying to set it up now?
Didn't get it yet, but I'm in.
The only reason I ask is Mark has some videos on it.
And
Is
they, and they don't suck.
Yeah.
In his folder.
Surprisingly enough, they don't suck.
Surprisingly enough, it's almost like he knows how to explain this stuff.
Where can I find it?
Would he have access to that store?
I would think so.
Let's see. It's been so long since I looked at it. Education video, maybe.
I will check.
Guys, I think Mark's was my hooked up with. Walk me through the setup.
You cut out there, Jeff, but I think we got, or at least you did for me. I don't know.
Yeah, my mic is acting weird. I was just saying that I think in education videos, but that
Okay, yeah. February 8th, 2022. Wow. He's
I
probably,
see it.
it's probably
612.
changed since then, but this would be a good basic. I would say things have probably changed in over a year and a half almost. But that would be definitely a good basic place to start. And then just hit him up on a message. He's more than willing to help.
Mark, the thing with Mark, Mark is going into his busy season. So Mark is like he's basically a stock trading snowbird. So for all of you who don't know what a snowbird is, just Google it. No. So basically, you know, in Florida we got snowbird. Georgia, you got snowbirds in Georgia probably too.
Well, I lived in Florida for 3 years. So.
Oh, facts.
Yeah.
So basically, anyone who lives up north, especially in Canada, you know, that's why Florida's population is half Canadian. They basically all come down here during the cold times. But Mark, what happens is, you know, because he's brilliant and in demand, with his real job, which, you know, he helps put together some of the baddest ass, you know, trade show get-togethers and stuff like that out there. He goes into his busy season now, where he goes into high demand, and surprisingly, they actually pay him money. And so he's going to be focused more on that probably for the next few months. The summer season is really when things heat up for him. So just keep that in mind if you do message him and he doesn't get back to you really fast, or he seems maybe a little more curmudgeon-y than usual. It's likely due to that reason. He's probably just trying to figure out time. And he loves helping everybody in here. So sometimes he'll actually get upset because he'll be like, I just want to, you know, he wants to help. He's kind of getting addicted to it the way I am. It was cool experiencing the eureka moment and getting profitable. And I have to admit this, Dwayne, and you'll experience this soon enough, I'm sure. It's way more fun seeing it happen to other people. You know, and feeling like I had something to do with that.
Except guys like Bram who get it so fast kind of piss me off a little bit.
That's just annoying, and nobody likes him for that at all.
I'll get over that.
Yeah,
you know.
it's bullshit. Actually, we all wish horrible things.
Take in mind, I'm already trading for between 1.5 and 2 years, and I'm finally getting it.
Yep.
So the year and a half overnight success. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well, it's just because nobody knows your name until they do, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, boom. But he, you know, again, Bram, you know, he was coming in. He was working a few months ago. He was just kind of like, man, I don't know, I'm having trouble with this and this. We had to talk about it. He ironed a couple things out, and then, boom, the light bulb hit. And I'm telling you guys, it's just the struggle is real, but if you can get to that moment, it's pretty awesome.
By the way, DKNG was on my watch list today, and this is a nice example of a pattern of a failed pattern break, because you see there's a descending wedge forming on a 30-minute chart and also on the daily chart.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks in pre-market, but although it broke, it's still in the selling range. And
Look at it, and it came right back to S3 through a high volume hammer, right on S3, and then made the new high, and then the volume accelerated as it made the new high after that. I mean, it was at least a nice long off of 3 back to from the 3 to the 3. You could do an inside play on that easy.
Well, here's the question I would have on that guy pre-market, especially when Bram had it on his secondary list. It looks like an outside day to me. So I was not looking for that type of play. Is that a mistake I'm making by writing that off? You know, because it was a beautiful play.
I look at it from two perspectives. It can also do an R4 breakout and go for the break, and then it's a successful pattern break. But yeah, you can also trade it as a short. This was a trade you can take both sides, but first it needs to get above R4 and then consolidate and go for the break.
Yeah, you know, so for me, one of the reasons why I haven't enjoyed DKNG as much lately as I used to is DKNG's. Let me pop this out. My screen's still up, right? Yeah. If you look at DKNG, if you look at it, its average day is kind of like, you know, a very similar size, right? So most of your cams are going to be pretty much, you know, the difference between tight cams and weak cams are going to be very loose, right? So you kind of almost have to treat these as having a neutral bias when they look like this, which is kind of one of the reasons why I haven't been focusing on it lately, because there's been other stuff that, you know, for me lines up a little bit better. Plus we're at R4 here, so it could be a break or an other, but I can see exactly, you know, what he's... So even if you look at the daily on this one, right, if you come across here and come down like that, right, then basically that new high happens right around, you know, there. So if we mark that, right, if we just mark that as a level, get rid of that, let's get rid of this. Look at that. So this is when we pulled back, tested, and then broke that daily trend. We moved up. So in this instance, what Bram has done is, you know, he's pairing some pattern behavior, you know, on top of that. So he's saying he's really basically saying it could be a breakout today, right? Because he's thinking it could be a breakout. It could go out here, right? But in the pre-market, it failed that, right? It tried to break out and it didn't. So in the beginning of the day at the open, the play was an R4 failure, right? So at the open, I would have been short here, and my target would have been S3 or somewhere around S3, right? I would have played a failure, and then I likely would have stopped all out here. Now, if you miss this move, right, the alternative is to play the bounce, right? So it came down to support, hammered with volume, came up and made that new high. So now what you've done is you've gone from a selling range into a buying range, right? Now they still could intend to break this out, right? They may have just needed to come all the way back. So today could still result as an outside day. The important thing to remember at all times is when I'm calling it an outside day versus an inside day, I'm talking about where I expect the price to close, right? Where I'm expecting us to find value. Right? That doesn't mean I'm expecting to stay there, right? We can go out the range and back to the range, through the range, right? Like we could start out here and come all, you know, R6 to S6. We could start out here and come all the way down to here, right? All I'm saying is by saying it's an outside day is I'm expecting us to, at some point, eventually, by the end of the day, to close outside of value. right? So even if this day was a tighter day, we can still play these inside ranges, right? You just have to recognize that we're planning on coming out here or going down here, right? Eventually. So if you fail this breakout, that doesn't mean you're doing a full reversal. You could just be coming back to S3 to bounce, right? And then coming back up. But now look, we've gone from S3 back to R3, and look at R3, isolated pivot right on R3 to the penny. Now we've tried to retest it. Now sellers are hitting to the downside, right? So we could actually be doing this, right? Because it's a tight range, right? So that's why the question when you're getting into a position needs to be, if I'm going to go along here, where's my target? Well, if I'm going along at S3, my target is R3. So you may not take this trade, right? You may decide not to do this, right? Because you're going to say that I would want to put my stop here. And if I put my stop to here, I barely get 2-to-1 by the time I get there. And I don't like trading against 2 levels, a VWAP, a POC, and into R3 to only get 2-to-1, right? So you may just not have taken this trade at all. So then you would wait for it to come back to R3 and say, hey, we tried to break out. We failed to break out. We've tried to rally. We've done an ISO pivot. We failed to rally. You know what I mean? And then you could start thinking about maybe going short here down this way. So there's lots of different plays available. And the range, again, only really determines where you expect to end up, right? By the time this day is over, or at what point, where do we expect to find value, right? We've broken out, so I expect to find value outside, right? Or we haven't broken out, so I expect to stay at value. All right, hey, it's 10:30, so I got to dip. I'm going to do a couple of things before my 1 o'clock time together. But Bram, feel free to hang and chat with everybody, and Dwayne, and do your thing. Thanks, fun people.
Hey Thor.
Yo,
Thanks, Thor.
Can I
Take
just
care.
get a quick favor before you go?
maybe. Okay, go for it.
Could I bug you to share your ES chart with your pivots? I'm just trying to configure Sierra, and it's becoming a pain.
Oh,
trying to
yeah,
get them to
sure.
look the same.
Absolutely. There you go. All right, I'll leave that on for a few minutes.
I'll just grab a screenshot. Can you show me your daily
Hold
as
on,
well? Sorry.
do this. Hold on.
Oh, sweet.
And then here's the daily.
That's amazing. Thank you very much.
No problem. Talk to you later.
Yeah, a lot of people use configuring Sierra and Pain in the same sentence a lot.
It's
Many.
It's like you almost need like a degree to use this stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice because they have like, pretty much everything you could want.
Right.
Like I love DAS. I just love how easy it is to use. But I've been using footprint charts a lot more, and like those little bubbles and stuff that Bookmap has. I've actually been trying to configure a heat map on Sierra as well. So like it pretty much has almost everything. But yeah, trying to get it to look the way that you want it to, just because it's so customizable. It's
Right.
it's like Russian nesting dolls. Like the menus have menus have menus.
Right.
So I'm getting close, but just I can't seem to nail down this because like all of the pivots they use different. They pull data from different time frames,
Right.
and so I have a daily chart open that I have to reference the pivot study to, but I also have to make sure that the timing is right. And without a reference for like where should R4 be or where should S3 be, like I'm just like I have no idea what's actually right.
Yeah.
So
If you get the cams configured with Sierra, the more information you could share, you could probably help a few people.
yeah, no, I'll definitely if I can get it consistent or the setup actually is like usable, I'll definitely share the settings, and like I can help people to walk through it too. Like it's not I didn't think it was going to be this tough. Like I literally almost had as much frustration learning this platform as I did trading.
Right.
But
Oh.
it's just unfortunate that like we're in 2023 and we still can't get like
Right.
like a one-stop shop for charting. You know, it's
It's
like
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, you know, like if you want like footprint charts, like okay, well DAS doesn't have that, and they had the wonkiest volume profile for the longest time. Like you
Yeah.
couldn't actually like anchor your volume profile to a specific period forever, and I'm just like, come on guys, like you got to fix this.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you want like the order book, like they don't have the L2 for futures
Right.
on DAS, which is like okay, so you need a DOM.
Right.
So yeah, it is really nice if you can get it if you can figure the matrix out.
Yeah. It's crazy. I wanted to learn TPO charts, so I was in JJ's room back when he first started, VWAP Trader 1 on Twitter, if you know who I'm talking about. He
Yeah.
Confessions of a Market Maker.
Yeah, that guy's awesome.
Yeah, he had it was like $50 a month when he first started. He's like, buy me a cup of coffee a day and I'll show you how to read TPO charts. And so I looked into Sierra and I was like, what? I got to do what?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to get the charting software to get used to TPO charts. And man, it was just way too much stuff you got to go through to even, it was like a privilege to do business with them. So I didn't do it, but I know some guys now that are really heavily into it. Luke and JP, but man, those guys, they know that inside out now. So you might want to shoot them a message every now and then. They might be able to help you out.
Yeah, I might do that. I've actually got there's a website you can go to. I forget the name of it, but there's a guy that has a whole bunch of presets of charts, so you can actually just download the chart book, and then you've actually got the charts set up, very close to kind of how you'd want it. Like if you look up a TPO or a volume profile, like the one that I have actually right now, and I'll send a screenshot of it here. But it actually has the TPO and the volume profile, like right side by side, and like I just use it for the daily and the RTH or the regular trading hours.
Yeah.
I just posted in the
whatever
this is here. But yeah, like it's fairly clean. I mean, you can actually see, like you get your points of control, your volume area, and you can easily you can easily see the the shape, the D, the P, the B, and just kind of where you are. And I just like this for like the value area that like Pivot Boss talks about, right? So do we have the like you can look at your TPO or your volume profile, and if you have a really big like discrepancy between like, well, where did price trade at time wise today versus where was most of the volume done? A lot of times it's very similar, right? Like most of the time is done at the same price as the volume or very close to it. But you can use this for like your volume area. Like, are we higher, lower, wider, narrower, inside, outside?
Right. And for me, it was a lot easier for me to see ranges than on a candle, a candle chart. And balance. Are we in balance or is there an imbalance? That was just a lot easier for me to see.
Yeah, I might. Is there anything that like Mark posted about how he trades like ranges and stuff? Like I've been gone for a while, so I'm kind of
he will share his and he's shared it somewhere. His how he sets up Thinkorswim, and for me that was like that's all I need. It's got all his ranges on it in different time frames.
Okay, because I always had a hard time trying to reference how Mark used that. Like I just couldn't personally see it. I was like, am I dumb? Like I don't know what's going on.
Well, that's I felt exactly the same way. And one day I just I think we might even been talking live, and I said, Mark, I don't get what you're talking about with ranges, and it kind of bothers me because I kind of feel like I'm missing out on something important.
Yeah.
And that was it. He went over it with me, and I was like, I know we've been through this, and he said, well, let me share my configuration, and now here it is. So these blue lines are, you know, like my 30-day range, and you know, this is my 60-day. What color would you like them to be? You know, and then I just used his Thinkorswim configuration, and that was the end of it. I just now I have it.
Okay. So you're using TOS then?
Yeah, yeah. Takes some getting used to, but
Oh yeah, there's always a little bit of a learning curve with each platform. Is there like a resource anywhere to like for Mark's ranges and stuff like that?
I will send the link in the VFD trading floor.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
Welcome.